All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome if you're just coming in. My name is Angelina Alpert. I am a research assistant at the University of Missouri, Kansas City Institute for Human Development. We are going to go ahead and get started with our monthly open door workshop for today. So if you are new to our mods, they are part of our No Wrong Door. And the purpose of No Wrong Door is to transform the way people access services in the community. And the idea is to support individuals and caregivers to make decisions on complete and accurate information about their options for anyone seeking long-term services and supports. Pass it over to David Baker really quick, and he's going to go ahead and tell you about the PowerUp conference.
All right. Thank you, Angelina, and good afternoon, everybody. David Baker, Missouri Assistive Technology here. Just want to quickly remind everybody that our PowerUp 2023 conference is coming up on April 3rd and 4th in Columbia, Missouri, and registration is open. So we would certainly love to have a number of you be able to attend, and we have a really great lineup this year with our keynote closing speaker being Brendan Hildreth, who's responsible for the Accessible Icon project that some of you may be familiar with. We have Sam Seavey, who is one of the more influential folks in assistive technology, does a lot of stuff on YouTube, especially for individuals who are visually impaired. And then a great session, a great lineup of sessions focusing on community living, employment, education, and all the other arenas that assistive technology touches on. So again, April 3rd and 4th in Columbia, and registration is open, and we would love to have a number of you attend because we know that you too are very interested in the world of assistive technology and all it can do for the folks we work with. So I will hand it back over to you, Angelina.
All right. And all of the links for all of the stuff that I'm going to go over, I'm going to put in the chat once I go through all of them. We have our Charting the Life course showcase coming up for this year. That's going to be May 2nd through 4th. It is all in person this year, which is super exciting. All of our information for that is on the website link that I will go ahead and send. Missouri Family to Family also hosts monthly Good Life groups. And these are separated for different life stages. So the blast off is for ages 13 and under. Launch is for ages 14 to 26. Planning forward is ages 27 and up. And then we also have a sibling-centered group. And these groups just go ahead and walk you through different life domains and kind of learn about services, navigate systems, and plan for the future. Also have some information on Missouri Claim. If you have any questions about Medicare, they are the place to go. We have their website there as well as their phone number, which I will again go ahead and place in the chat. And then we're going to go ahead and get started with our Charting the Life course stuff for today. So we're going to be talking about the integrated support star today. So supports sometimes unintentionally become a barrier to relationships and community, as you can see on that left circle. So the goal of the star is to leverage different parts of the star, integrating them into a person's life. The different parts of the star are personal strengths and assets, which is the blue part. The purple part is going to be your relationships. The green is going to be your eligibility specific services. The dark blue is your community-based services. And then the pink art is technology. So as you can see on the right, the goal with the star is to integrate those services and supports so that they aren't becoming a barrier to the person who is receiving them, and that they are still being integrated into the community and forming those relationships. The integrated support star can be used by anyone to guide their thinking about supports. It can be used to map services and supports, problem solve for a specific need, or to plan for the future. So we're going to go ahead and watch a video on the integrated support star, and it's going to walk you through how to use the star to problem solve.
The integrated service and support star has become something that can be used for planning, problem solving, or exploring. So I'm going to kind of just give you some quick ways that it's been utilized. So we have a lot of people call us and talk to us about transportation. And so I'm like, that's a great way to problem solve through the star. Again, you don't need to pull this out. You should be teaching yourself to constantly be thinking about the 5 parts of the star. So the first thing I would do if someone said, help me think through transportation. Had I done the star before thinking about life course, I probably would have started, well, is there share fare in our community? Can we figure out how the Medicaid waiver can fund that service? Can the provider provide that transportation? And those are all things that are available. And those are all things that are down in the green. But that's not where we start anymore. Where we start is, what is that person's strengths and assets? Is that person going to learn how to drive one day? What do we need to do to help them buy a car or learn how to navigate using a car? Or maybe they can't do that, but maybe they can learn how to ride the bus to work or get around with their friends. So that means we might need to teach them how to ride a bus. Or maybe that person could walk or learn how to bicycle in their community to where they need to go. So we first start there. Then what we do is we start thinking about what is available in our community. Is it a walkable community? Does it have bus lines? You know, a subway system or something in that community? Again, always thinking about what am I going to need to teach them to do to learn how to do that? We also know that you can use Uber or Lyft or any other sort of technology to call a ride. So are we teaching people to access those types of services and supports and utilize that? Or maybe if they decide that taking a bus is what they want, can they get an app that enables them to know about when to get on and off those buses? Or maybe what they're calling about is they want transportation to their job. Have we looked at transportation, sharing, and is there somebody at the job that maybe could come pick them up and we can give them a couple dollars to get to work? So the whole idea is how am I using this to problem solve? Again, not any one way is better than the other. So we might use funding from our Medicaid waiver supports or some other sort of government supports to fund the iPad to teach somebody how to ride their bus, or maybe it's those services that cover the cost of a Lyft or an Uber. So again, problem solving, we put that problem in the middle of that star, and then we force ourselves to go around and really think through all of our options.
All right, so there are other videos on the Life Course website that will talk about different parts of the star. If you need more specific examples from each of the sections. And then next for today's topic, we went ahead and had a integrated support star that is specific for safety and security options. I'll go through a couple of these because it's kind of small and hard to see. But I'm also going to send this out in the slides in the recording afterwards, so you'll be able to see all of it. But some things to think about for safety and security options for personal strengths and assets would be knowing addresses, phone numbers, and other contacts, knowing how to use 911, having an emergency or disaster plan, being able to lock and unlock the door, whether it's with a key or a code. And then for relationships, that would just be anybody that you're connected to. So whether it's parents, siblings, any other family members, friends, if there's neighbors around that could help, and familiar staff or workers at local stores and restaurants. Eligibility supports, full guardianship or 24-hour supervision, or if there's limited guardianship and special needs trust, Some community resources would be a power of attorney, neighborhood watch, local police department, a living trust, or LifeLock. For technology, automatic bill payments and direct deposits, personal safety devices, remote monitoring, so like the Ring doorbell cameras and some things like that. Or there's some iPad and smartphone apps that can be used as well. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to David now, and he's going to tell us about digital literacy.
Alrighty. Good afternoon again, everybody. David Baker with Missouri Assistive Technology. And so certainly glad to have a number of you on here today. It's been a while since we've had the opportunity to gather, and we've all had the holidays and one thing and another. So I'm glad that you've followed us into 2023 with your interest in the topics that we discuss here through the MOD series. So today we're going to talk about digital literacy and digital safety. And I want to start by kind of going into getting into our Wayback Machine and go think back to some of the earlier mods that that you may have attended. And we kind of talked about assistive technology in the sense of that it's an umbrella term. So under that umbrella, we have devices, and then we also have services. And when we talk about services, we're talking about those things that directly assist an individual with a disability in selecting and acquiring and using their technology device. And so digital literacy and digital skills are obviously a service, and that if we really want to make sure that folks are able to take advantage of all the great things that are out there online, that we spend time paying attention to the issue of digital safety and also the issue of digital literacy to help. And so we kind of need to spend some time as we're working through the STAR thinking about where that individual is and where we might need to go provide some additional training or build some additional skills, and how we might coordinate services around that, so that an individual can fully take advantage of technology and all the things that it can do in their lives. So we're going to be heavy on the service side of the assistive technology world today, and not as much on the devices themselves. And so we'll talk, like I said, on digital literacy, digital safety, and then I want to make everybody aware of an initiative that's going on here in Missouri that I would love to partner with some of you on, because I think what you do might dovetail nicely with what this project entails. So let's start with digital literacy. And what is it? We often hear this term thrown around that folks need to have a certain level of digital literacy, or we need to spend more time teaching students in schools about digital literacy. And the definition that you see on your screen comes from the American Library Association. And I thought they had one of the better definitions out there. And they define it as the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information, requiring both cognitive and technical skills. So essentially what digital literacy means is that we have, or you have, the skills necessary to be able to live, to learn, and to work in our community, and to communicate and access that information. Because as we all know, the world is increasingly digital, and we are more and more reliant on things like the internet and social media and our mobile devices to help us connect with the world. So digital literacy, this is kind of the working definition that most often is out there. So why does it matter? Well, as I kind of alluded to, there used to be a time where the internet was a luxury, and everything you really needed in life, you could get at your corner store or down the street or something like that. But this is 2023, and essentially everything that we do is online, and technology helps us find information, discover new opportunities, take classes, shop, communicate with family and friends. And so digital literacy also helps us in the world of work. You have to have a certain degree of digital literacy to find a job. If you already have a job, your digital literacy can help you get a better job or move up in the job that you have. So that's another reason that digital literacy is important. So with almost everything being online and our reliance on technology in so many spheres, making sure that folks are digitally literate becomes increasingly important as an assistive technology or just as a technology service in general. So going back to when Angelina was sort of working through the star there, and in the upper left-hand corner is the pink section of the star, and that was our technology section. And so when we think through technology and how it can help make somebody independent and give them a good life, when we have that discussion, are we also thinking about digital literacy and digital safety and whether or not individuals have those skills that are necessary for them to be able to take advantage of what's online as part of their living their good life? If not, we should probably spend a little more time becoming more familiar with that and working with individuals to build that capacity. So if we go to the next slide here, we could literally spend weeks just talking about the resources that are out there. There are a lot of great resources that teach individuals about digital literacy. Slightly ironically, a lot of them are online, but there are opportunities in our communities through libraries and one thing and another. But I did want to make folks aware of two of the better ones that are out there. If you want to go out and do some further digging and become more familiar with what all falls under this umbrella of digital literacy. This is one that pops up a lot as sort of the recommended go-to site. And it's a group called North Star Digital Literacy. And there's sort of two aspects to this organization. There are some services that you can buy through them, and there's a curriculum that you can buy, but they do have a number of really, really nice free things that you can access off their website that might be good tools for helping somebody learn about digital literacy, or good tools to help somebody kind of realize where they are with their skills and what other skills they may need to develop. So I just have a screenshot here of sort of one of their opening pages, but over there on the left-hand side, for instance, where it says essential computer skills, there are a series of little self-tests that an individual can take. They kind of walk through some of the basic building blocks of how to use their computer, how to send an email, all those truly important pieces that go into building digital literacy. If we move to the next slide, one of the other things that I really like about North Star Digital is that they partner with a lot of organizations around the United States. And there's a little, on that homepage that we were just looking at, you can put in your zip code. So I just was randomly doing this across the state of Missouri and looking up various zip codes and putting them in there. So if this is just a little snapshot from the 65548 zip code, which is down there around the lake, around Lebanon. And when I put that in there, what I get is a series, is any organization that is partnering with North Star Digital Literacy, who is providing something in the community around the subject of digital literacy, is going to show up. And so as I did my random sort of search around the state of Missouri, I saw a lot of service organizations, I saw a lot of libraries that have partnered to provide to individuals in the community these digital literacy building skills. So again, North Star Digital Literacy, I think it's a great site. A lot of people reference it as sort of the place to go to kind of build these skills or find out who in your community can help you build these skills. And so if you aren't familiar with it, you might spend some time kind of becoming familiar with those organizations, or spending some time on the tutorials to kind of get the big picture of how wonderful a tool this is. Another one, if we move on to the next slide, that's out there that equally is super great for just kind of building and helping people sort of self-test and become aware of the basic building blocks of digital literacy, is GCF Global. And their website is there on the title bar. And they have a number of self-paced tutorials as well, helping people in this instance that's on the screen understand what email is and how to send it, and what the various parts are, what the various buttons and one thing and another are. A lot of times we take these things for granted, but we all had to learn them somewhere along the way. And I think we probably all know individuals that struggle with some of those basic elements. So North Star Digital Literacy, GCF Global, they are great resources for digging deeper into the subject of digital literacy. But again, the big part here is that that's an assistive technology skill and something that we need to make sure that we are having a discussion with folks about, so that they can build their capacity to independently use the great tools that are out there. Where I want to spend, if we move on to the next slide, a fair amount of our time here today. And apparently when I sent that slide over to Angelina, that one didn't exactly come through very, very cleanly. But that's on the whole subject of digital safety. And this is something that we all have to pay attention to. And I think that there is probably a little bit more need for some emphasis when we talk about digital safety and individuals with disabilities. In its simplest sense, digital safety are those steps we take to be safe on the internet, to protect our information, to protect ourselves personally, to become as aware as we possibly can about security risks and how to stay personally safe, and also to protect our information and our personal property. It is kind of one of those things we unfortunately all have to be aware of sort of on a constant basis, just because of the nature of the digital activity out there, and the fact that we all know that there are folks that are not exactly the most scrupulous human beings out there that are looking for easy opportunities. So, and then the research itself suggests that when it comes to individuals with disabilities, they are at a significantly higher risk for issues around digital safety when they are online. So again, it's extremely important that this is something that we are working with folks on to keep them safe. So let's move on to the next slide. And we're going to kind of walk through this really quickly, but there are a couple of aspects of digital safety that are sort of what I would consider to be the common sense things that we need to have on our radar screen. So for instance, just these first 5 points are going to be around the whole idea of staying safe. And these are, like I said, kind of common sense ground rules we should always adhere to, and the folks that we know in our world should also adhere to when they are online. And so the first one is about information, and the fact that we need to be careful about the information that we put on our profiles, that we think carefully about what we share with others, and never have things like a home address or a phone number out there. And it's important to keep this information, our personal information, safe. So sometimes people can get a little bit rambunctious in terms of what they're putting out there in an email that they think is safe, but there's always somebody out there that could be unscrupulous and take a peek at it. And if we go too far, it could lead to issues around our safety. Passwords, how many of us at one point or another have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is our password, and we know better than that. And I did just a little research here earlier in the week, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is still the most common password used in the United States, according to what I looked up. We all know we need to have strong and multiple passwords. Using things like your birthday or your pet's name or your address simply aren't good passwords, because others can quickly guess them. And once you've had somebody guess your password, they could get in there and get your personal information. It's not on this slide per se, but having multiple passwords. I know we all get frustrated with passwords, and so sometimes we default to using the same one over and over again. All it takes is one breach for that password to get into somebody's system, and they have access to other things. And again, going back to how the internet has changed and become critical, that could be your bank account, that could be your retirement account, that could be your email, that could be a credit card for a department store or something like that. So we need to make sure people don't go too far with sharing information, that they have strong passwords, and that they need to choose strict privacy settings, again, to protect themselves and to protect their information. So the more selective we are about who we interact with on social media, the safer we're going to be online. So making your account private or hiding your profile from people you don't know are a few ways that we can adjust privacy settings in social media apps in places like Facebook, on Twitter. And it's always a good idea to use the more secure settings to increase the amount of privacy that you have. And just as kind of a quick personal note on this, my daughter, not too many years ago, had some issues on this around not really realizing the importance of having strict privacy settings. And she has unfortunately learned that lesson, and might be one of the most locked down people online when it comes to social media and our ability to access it. So I've kind of touched some of these things I've sort of experienced in my own personal life as well. So if we move on to the next slide, another good sort of basic building block and staying safe online is only connect with people you know. It is really easy, and sometimes we get excited about the idea of, well, golly, if I can have this many followers, or if I can have this many people friend me on Facebook, then that must mean something. We can kind of get that false sense of popularity or what have you by having people, but we don't always know who it is that's following us. And there are people out there that'll strictly follow for nefarious purposes. So be selective in terms of who you allow to follow you. Try to set up your privacy settings so that they have to be approved by you. Don't just direct message people because they direct message you to begin with. Being safe, limited to family and friends and people you know is sort of the best way to go based on a lot of the stuff that I've read about staying safe online. And then finally, be mindful of what you say. It's easy to get caught up in what others have said. And it's sometimes easy for us to think that we're anonymous by virtue of using the internet and using social media. And so anything that might make others afraid, upset, or angry, either you think twice before you put it out there, because those things have a way of snowballing and getting out of control. And then you could be reported or worse. So, again, a basic building block is just be mindful of what you say out there. All right, so let's move on to the next slide here, please, Angelina. And that is this whole issue of harassment online. Unfortunately, many individuals out there will experience some type of negative interaction at some point or another online. And the Pew Research folks did a fairly recent survey on this issue, and they noted that roughly 4 in 10 Americans will be harassed at some point or another online. And inside this group, about half of the people that felt that they were harassed cited politics or some other social issue as sort of being the reason that they felt that they were harassed online. And so oddly, it seems that we often will allow more flexibility in terms of what we allow people to get away with towards us online than we would in person. So it's important to keep in mind that even online, anything that is intended to harm or demean us is a form of harassment. And so the perpetrator, the bully, they simply want to seek to inflict some kind of physical or emotional harm, and they take pleasure in this activity. So bottom line here is it's still harassment, even if it's online. And if you wouldn't stand for it in your interactions, your face-to-face interactions, then certainly don't stand for it online. And so some of the more common things that are out there are cyber stalking, catfishing, doxing, and trolling. And so cyber stalking is when somebody uses the internet or other electronic means to stalk somebody, to follow them, to harass them, to harass a group or an organization. And it can come in a variety of forms, including accusing people falsely, defaming individuals, slandering them. And it often happens, unfortunately, more often than we want to accept. And the bottom line is that it is harassment, and it could in some instances even be a crime. Catfishing, I think, is an incredibly odious form of harassment online. And it is when somebody acts like they are somebody else. So they might set up an artificial profile where they just take a random picture and create a bio, and they put it out online there. And sometimes those photos are stolen, which makes this even more odious in some ways. And when these people pretend to be somebody else, there are a lot of negative things that can happen. What's especially odious to me in this idea of catfishing is that individuals in this day and age, we use the internet to connect with others. We use the internet to find personal relationships, to find romantic relationships. And when we do that, when we try to connect online with others, we are to a certain extent enabling ourselves, we're trusting other folks, and we're also making ourselves somewhat vulnerable out there. And so the idea of somebody creating a false profile, pretending that they're somebody they aren't, and engaging in catfishing can seriously, if it happens to somebody, it can seriously undermine their trust and their confidence as a result. So, but again, it's a form of harassment that's all too common out there online. Doxing, which is on the next slide here, has been in the news fairly often here over the last couple of years. And it's when somebody gets your public information, such as your address or your phone number, they share it with others. And the whole idea behind sharing it with others is to generally to use it against you. And so examples of doxing that have been in the news recently have to do with one group of individuals disagreeing, maybe with an elected official, spreading their home address around, and then showing up in mass on their yard to chant or what have you. And there have been a couple of instances here over the last few years. I'm in the Kansas City area of this happening in schools where an individual may have been perceived as saying something. It gets online, their home address gets shared, and a bunch of students will show up basically protesting on their front yard. So it's sort of a violation of privacy when all that information gets out there. And then finally, trolling, which has been around since the internet was invented, basically. It's a form of cyberbullying, and it's when somebody makes comments online just to stir up trouble and make others angry or upset. Trolls target people they think are different, are vulnerable, and so they can attack those people, most often based on race, sexual orientation, and or disability. And there was a case here not too long ago that I was made aware of trolling that involved an individual with disability, and his mother had some facial things as a result of his disability. And his mother it was actually a fairly young man, probably 9, 10, 11, somewhere in there. And his mother had posted something online about it. And somebody had taken that picture and they had created it into a meme, and that meme had gotten out there, and it was just absolutely amazing what was being said about this young man. And that was an example of trolling, where somebody simply did that to be hurtful and to cause conflict in some way, shape, or form. So these are, again, online. If you would not accept a behavior that you experience online in your personal life, then don't accept it online. And there are lots of ways that harassment happens. And as I said earlier, for people with disability, harassment online is probably higher than the general public. So, okay, what happens if we move on to the next slide here? What are sort of best practices if you do experience harassment online? The first thing to do is get offline. Shut off your device, remove it, and remove yourself from a bad situation. All too often, we get sort of caught up and we could make the situation worse. But if you feel unsafe or you're experiencing a conflict with somebody when you are online, power down. Get offline. Getting offline removes you from the situation. It gives you a chance to cool down, or give somebody else a chance to cool down. And you can determine your next steps in terms of how you're going to address this problem before you make it any best or any worse. And sometimes when I think about these what to do steps, I think about it as sort of along the lines of a first aid kit. Hopefully we'll never have to take these steps, but we want to have them in the back of our mind in case something does happen, either to ourselves or to somebody that we know. The second recommendation out there for what to do is to reach out for support. Talk to a trusted friend or a caregiver. Be honest with them about what happened, and see if you can't come up with a rational way of approaching this. Sometimes we simply don't know. We get upset when something happens online or something goes wrong for us when we're out there online, and we don't really know what to do. And it's best if we reach out and ask for support. I can think of an example that I was made aware of here not too long ago, in which somebody had gone online to do some shopping. It had gone terribly awry for them, and they thought their best approach, instead of reaching out and sort of having the difficult conversation with somebody, they literally thought it would just go away, and it just got worse. And so by the time they did reach out for support, they had some severe financial issues. So reach out, get offline, reach out to somebody for support, help them walk you through what might be the best strategy for the situation that you're experiencing. If we move on to the next slide, block. If you're on a social media site and somebody is bothering you, we need to make sure that we are blocking them and we're reporting them. Every single social media site has these options. And so by blocking somebody, it means they can't see your profile anymore or your posts. So if you, it's always advisable to go in and spend some time in the various social media platforms. If you're on Facebook, if you're on Twitter, or if you're on TikTok, there are ways that you can block and report. Spending a little time becoming familiar with those might be worthwhile, so that if an incident does happen, you don't have to quickly figure it out, especially if it's an ugly incident that you're experiencing. So, you know, when you do block and report somebody through some of these social media sites, they will investigate and they will handle it. And so, you know, blocking somebody, reporting them could be good first steps to protecting yourself if somebody is harassing you, in particular through a social media site. And in some instances, it may be necessary to contact the police based on the level of the situation. So, you know, if you experience something that you think is a crime, or if something gets way out of hand and incredibly threatening, most police departments, especially larger police departments in this day and age, have a subsection that is handling these types of activities that are out there. So don't be hesitant, don't be embarrassed. If it is a really true emergency of some sort, feel free, reach out to your local law enforcement and have them guide you or provide you with some additional assistance. All right, so not everything is terrible out there online, even though I just kind of made it sound that way, I suppose. So if we move on to the next slide, just a couple more tips on online shopping. You know, there's no reason that, you know, sometimes after those bad tips, for instance, we could use a little retail therapy. So maybe we want to go online and do a little shopping. And so, but we also need to approach this with an ounce of, or with a little bit of caution. And so in some instances, it may be a good idea to shop with a friend, especially if you're new to the idea of online shopping. You haven't quite figured out the nuances of what information to put in and how to enter your credit card, or maybe you get a little carried away when you're online shopping. And so you can make this a social event at the same time that maybe that individual is giving you some guidance on how to do this safely. Always use secure pay systems. Again, it's one of those things based on stories that I've heard over the years. You would think this is kind of baked into our thinking, but we still have a lot of instances where people aren't totally aware of the fact you need to use a secure pay system. And if we're working with somebody who has a disability, maybe they're new to using online shopping, maybe they've just recently opened their own bank account for the first time. These are sort of some of the basic skills that we need to work with them on to help them be safe when they're online shopping. So using a credit card as opposed to a debit card. I have more protections if I use my credit card than I do if I use my debit card. And then you have third-party systems like PayPal, which are very safe and secure for doing online shopping. Making sure that individuals are doing their research before they do a purchase online. Not all companies out there, they may look really cool on their website and it may be flashy and they may have exactly what I think I want, but not all businesses online are reputable, and some of them are more like facades and they just want your information so that they can do things with it that you don't want them to do. So do your research. Don't get sort of Twitter-pated by finding that item you want at that price you think is great. Make sure that it's a reputable company. Read reviews, make sure the URL looks legitimate. All those types of things go a long way in protecting somebody when they are online shopping. So let's move on to the next slide. And these are some tips for caregivers. All these tips that we've covered so far are good for all of us individually. They're good building blocks for the folks that we work with as they are learning to do things online and do things online independently. But sometimes we sort of have that gray area where maybe you're the parent of a child with a disability, or you're a caregiver in some way for an individual. And so we need to kind of establish some ideas of how to handle that. The first thing, this is more a little bit if you're a parent, but make your your home safe for the internet. Put roadblocks in place to avoid problems before they happen. You know, don't just do these. And roadblocks are things like increasing the security settings, maybe having password protected devices if you're afraid somebody will get on a device that you don't want them on, putting computers into common areas in a home or a group home where people can't just kind of slink away and go places you don't want them to go. So these are all ideas of roadblocks, but don't just put roadblocks in place without having a discussion with an individual. You know, make them aware that this is why this is happening and this is the roadblock and this is why we're doing it. And so communicate well, communicate frequently with individuals who are using the internet to open a dialogue. It's more likely that if you can open a dialogue with somebody about their online activities as opposed to waiting for something terrible to happen or just outright, you know, saying you can't do this or you can't do that, that things will probably go awry. And any of us who have had teenagers realize that, golly, you know, they're still going to do what they're going to do. So this has always been a great strategy, is just have a discussion. Learn how somebody's using the internet, learn what they want to do on the internet, and talk through what the pros and the cons of that idea might be. If we move on to the next slide, we want to also we don't want to prevent people from using, if they open, going back to the example of, you know, if somebody opens their first bank account, they get their first credit card or their first debit card, they may want to do some things online. We have all gotten used to using Amazon and some of those delivery services. Those are even more important and more convenient for people with disabilities. So we need to make some decisions on how somebody is going to financially do things online. Are we going to allow them to do it independently? Do we need to teach them how to do it? What role do we want in their finances, and act accordingly? You know, the whole idea is to make people independent as possible. And some of these are difficult areas to work through, but we need to be involved with them. And then if somebody, you know, all those things that are positive that happen, somebody makes their first transaction online, and we want to make sure that we reinforce the positive aspects and that we are helping individuals to be independent and to empower them to do whatever it is that they want. And then there, frankly, are just times we don't know what the answer is. We might encounter something with a family member or somebody we're responsible with, and we're not really sure how we fit into that role or what our role is. So, you know, get support from others. How have other family members handled this? How have other people we know and respect handled some of these situations? It takes all of us sometimes to figure some of these things out. So never be bashful about asking somebody you work with or an organization you respect for some guidance on how to handle some of these issues around allowing people freedom online, but at the same time making sure that they're protected. So if we move on to the next slide, and we might be a little ahead of schedule here. This is the Affordable Connectivity Program, and I really hope that the vast majority of you online here today with us are familiar with this. We all learned a lot about the digital divide over the course of the pandemic, and one of the responses at the federal level was to create the Affordable Connectivity Program, and it is a federal program which provides a subsidy benefit to qualifying households for equal access to broadband. So basically up to $50 a month if you qualify to help offset the cost of broadband access or your internet access. And they actually allocated a phenomenal amount of money to this. And my understanding is that not quite as many people have signed up for it as they had hoped, and it is still available. And there are a number of ways to qualify. And it could be based around household income, if you receive WIC, Medicaid, SNAP, some of those federal programs, veterans pension, those types of things are qualifiers. If you receive a Pell Grant, if you have Lifeline benefits. So there's a number of different ways that individuals could qualify. It's primarily aimed at lower income households. And again, the whole idea is to offset the cost of getting online, because again, we know how valuable being online is. So you can get more information, and this will be in the PowerPoint. And I think Angelina might have put the link up there in the chat. But again, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, fcc.gov/ACP. So again, fcc.gov/ACP for additional information, or you can certainly feel free to reach out to me and I can point you in some of those directions as well and provide you with some additional guidance on this program or share additional knowledge. So if we move on to the next slide, this is a program, the Community Supporting Connectivity is a digital inclusion program that Missouri Assistive Technology is doing jointly with the Missouri Developmental Disabilities Council. And the whole idea here is to provide access to technology, to devices, to resources, including training, application support for the Affordable Connectivity Program, predominantly to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. And we're working on this statewide. And so we are looking for folks to help us that might be able to host training events, to hold enrollment fairs where we could come in and sign people up for the affordable broadband program, and then in other types of outreach efforts as well as trying to find some subject matters in 6 different areas of the state that can be sort of local conduits of information and services around digital inclusion. And the whole idea, unfortunately, people with disabilities are too often on the wrong side of the digital divide, even more true for individuals with IDD. And so if we can close that gap, that's the whole idea behind the Community Supporting Connectivity Program. So again, I want to throw this out. I know we have people from all over the state here. If you are interested in learning more about this program, if you maybe want to host a training event or an enrollment fair or some type of outreach event, please reach out to me, and because we're in the process kind of trying to figure out what our opportunities are around the state and starting to get out there and get some of these things executed to get folks signed up and more knowledgeable and close that digital divide. So that is all I have today, Angelina, and I know you have a few closing comments and things to share with folks. So thank you very much, everybody.
All right, thank you, David. I just wanted to go ahead and point out that I did go ahead and put all of the links that I talked about and David talked about in the chat. Also just wanted to share out loud, even though I put it in the chat, as David was talking about knowing whether or not a website is reputable. Those Facebook and Instagram ads are great, but once you see those websites, Trustpilot and Scam Advisor are 2 really great websites. Just pop the website link in there really quick and see what kind of reviews and what kind of ratings it has on it to make sure that it's real and that it actually exists. Also going to go ahead and put in the Life Course Tools website link into the chat. We have all of our resources on there. Our library has all of our tools in it. They're all free for everyone to use. You can go ahead and print them off. You can also use them on tablets. We have a bunch of videos on there. Our YouTube is where you can find all of the past recorded open door workshops. That'll just be Charting the Life course on YouTube, and there's a playlist that is called No Wrong Door Mods that will be on there. There is the contact information for David. I just see that somebody asked in the chat what the best way to reach you is. David, I don't know if you want to, if your email or if your phone number is the better way.
I'll let you all in on a secret. Please use email dbaker@mo-at.org. Again, dbaker@mo-at.org. I will confess I am not exactly the world's most receptive person to the telephone or to voicemail, so it's always best to try to reach me. You can try to reach me that way. I can guarantee you I'll get back to you if I see an email.
All right, I went ahead and put your email in the chat as well. Also, just wanted to say all of the slides and the recording of today will also be sent out within the next couple of days once I get them processed and edited and everything. So all of the links will be in there again. And lastly, our next mod will be on February 22nd. same time, 12:30 to 1:30. It's going to be on supports for families, and we're going to be talking about best practices and steps to getting assistive technology. If anybody has any questions, comments, please feel free to reach out to either of us. I'll go ahead and put my email in the chat as well. All of the emails come from me, so if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. And David.
One quick thing. I saw Kelsey had put in the chat that LifeTech is having a free webinar on password managing tools this upcoming Friday from 10 to 11. And she put the link in there. And I'm so glad you put that in there. I was aware of that event, but I didn't know whether or not I could mention it to the group, because I thought that was wonderful when Chris had shared that information with me. So thank you for putting that in there.
Thank you for that. And just one last thing. These mods are open to anybody, whether professionals, families, individuals. So if you get the emails from us and think that somebody that might not be on our listserv would be interested, please feel free to share. We love to have everybody here. And other than that, everybody have a good day, and thank you for joining us.